Hello everyone, it's me, AlbyMTG, and today I have a Dominaria Mono Blue Flyers deck for you guys. This is a budget deck. It is within $40, as you can see up here, $40.33, but I'm sure you'll have some commons laying around, which will bring it into the $40 mark, and then just under 25 tickets online. Also, it has some cards from Dominaria, so the cards from Dominaria will go down in value once the set is officially out and the cards actually, get into people's hands. So this deck is super sweet, mono blue flyers, like I said, and only $40. So let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit. I was really interested in the card Tempest Djinn, 3 blue mana, blue for an 0/4 flying Djinn that gets +1/+0 for each basic island you control. This card really, I thought, was like super cool. I think it might be the second best one in the cycle of 3-colored 3-drops. I think the only one that's slightly better is the green one. The green one is pretty strong, but because the green one was just straight up so strong, everyone started brewing with that one right away, and they were just building like these mono green stompy lists. I decided to go for the second best option. I think Tempest Djinn is still super sweet, and this was also the preview card of MTG Young Mage, a fantastic YouTuber as well. So hopefully, if you're watching this, Young Mage, and I'm trying to build something here with your preview cards, so hopefully you enjoy this deck. I think it's pretty sweet, and I enjoyed the video where you had Papa Mage, your father, dress up as the Tempest Djinn. It was super sweet, super cool video. So yeah, Tempest Djinn I think is a super cool card, and that's kind of what made me want to brew around with it a little bit. So obviously, because Tempest Djinn gets +1/+0 for each basic island we control, we wanted to go mono blue, which is why our lands are just 20 islands. That's also part of the reason why the deck is so cheap, is because we're not playing any non-basic lands, so we don't really have any money to need to throw into those for some dual lands and things like that. So having 20 islands allows us to keep down the price quite a bit. The only really expensive cards that we have are Aethersphere Harvester. Aethersphere Harvester right now is just kind of a necessity. It's super good in this Flyers deck, of course. However, it's also extremely good against the mono red decks, and there are a lot of mono red decks. So if we never land an Aethersphere Harvester and our opponent doesn't have the Abrade to deal with it right away against mono red, it's usually just a free victory for us with Aethersphere Harvester. Aside from that, we're going to go ahead and one by one into the cards here. So we'll start off with the creatures. Hope of Ghirapur, just a nice little 1-drop flyer, essentially just a flying man in this deck. Siren Storm Tamer, again, just another 1-drop with flying, perfectly fine. Has some additional text on it where we can counter target spell or ability that targets ourselves or a creature we control, but most of the time we just really want it as a 1 blue mana 1/1 flyer. Here we have Skyship Plunderer, 2 mana, 2/1 flyer, perfectly fine. Stormfleet Aerialist, a 1/2 flyer for 2, but if we attack with another creature already, which we most likely would have, then it'll get a +1/+1 counter, so it'll be a 2/3 flyer on 2. We are only running 2 because we do want to maximize how often we're going to have a 2-power flyer on curve. And if the situation comes up where we don't have one of our Hopes of Ghirapur or one of our Siren Storm Tamers in our hand, then we'd be much better off playing a Skyship Plunderer or a Warkite Marauder here. Again, another 2-power flyer. We'd be much better off playing those instead of the 1/2 flyer Stormfleet Aerialist. Warkite Marauder, just an extremely strong card. In general, that's also, I believe, one of the most expensive cards in the deck. Probably the second most expensive, I believe. But just an absolutely fantastic card. Absolutely wonderful. Nimble Obstructionist, another super sweet card. Has flash, so we can hold up some of our spells that we're going to talk about here in a second. We can hold them up. As well as we can cycle if needed as well. If we don't need the Nimble Obstructionist, if we're really looking for the Aethersphere Harvester, if we're looking for, like a counter spell or something like that, then we do have the option to cycle it there. But I do like the fact that this has flash, and so we can hold off a little bit on it and possibly instead just hold up mana to try and opt instead. What I really like about opt in this deck is that as I was going through and creating the sideboard for this deck list, The two ops in the main board are just perfectly fine to sideboard out. These two ops can become anything over here in the sideboard, and you're perfectly okay with it, but these cards over here in the sideboard you don't necessarily want in your main deck as often as you would want the ops in your main deck. So most of the time when you do end up sideboarding with this deck, you're just going to take out the two ops and put in two cards from the sideboard that are significantly better than the ops. But just for the main board game, the opt is definitely going to be helpful to try and dig you to your creatures and things like that. So a little bit of a sideboard plan, if you're planning on playing this deck, is just take out the two ops and replace them with the two best sideboard cards for the matchup. Next we have two copies of Spell Pierce, just a little bit of interaction against some non-creature spells. One copy of Syncopate. This here is the Return to Ravnica version, however, it is being reprinted in Dominaria. I think Syncopate is a pretty sweet spell, and this is going to be really crucial on turns 4 and turn 5, because then we can hit things like the Scarab God, and we can hit things like Hazaret. Those are really when we're going to want to hold up our Syncopates. Well, actually, we only have one Syncopate in the deck, but it'll be really crucial to hold it up during that turn 4, turn 5 period, where a lot of decks will be trying to play their most powerful creatures. One Unsummon. Unsummon is super good against the green-red monsters builds and the decks that are just trying to play one creature each turn. Unsummon is essentially just like a Time Walk in those situations, and it can also remove a flyer for a turn so that we can just get an additional damage if for some reason they do have a blocker up. Aethersphere Harvester, I already talked about it before, just an absolutely fantastic card, and it's basically just essential in this deck. Next is 4 Curious Obsession. Because we are kind of a tempo deck, we're going to be attacking all the time, so giving our flyers, which already have evasion, an additional power and toughness, as well as the ability to draw cards. It's absolutely fantastic, and like I said, because we are a tempo deck, we're just going to be attacking each turn anyway, so we don't really have to deal too much with the downside of the Curious Obsessions, which is why there is 4 of them. And then finally, 4 Favorable Winds. Creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. Every single creature in the deck has flying, so the additional power and the additional toughness is pretty sweet. It's a nice little enchantment here to help us out with our mono blue flyer tempo deck. Moving on to the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Silent Gravestone, pretty good against the Scarab God and decks that are trying to do things with their graveyards. Next we have an additional copy of Spell Pierce, which is, again, just cheap interaction for the decks where we need that. 3 copies of Unsummon, like I said, in the matchups where you're up against things like red-green monsters and the decks that are just trying to play one creature at a time. I really, really like the Unsummons. I basically got this tech from when I was playing Merfolk a lot. I was streaming it over on twitch.tv/AlbyIsLive, and I was really, really enjoying the fact that against the decks that are just trying to play one creature at a time, you just remove their creature, hit for 2 or 3, and if you can do that several times, then it really, really makes a difference over the course of the game. And even if you just do it one time at a point where it's super crucial, then the unsummons can be super, super good. So that's why there's 3 unsummons here in the sideboard. Here we have 1 copy of Entrancing Melody. Entrancing Melody is basically just going to come in against the creature decks. If they have some sort of an annoying creature that you want to gain control of, then Entrancing Melody, I think, is probably the best one for this deck. Other options include Kefnet's Last Word, as well as Confiscation Coup, but I think in this deck the one that we want is Entrancing Melody for this sort of an effect. 2 copies of Essence Scatter, just some additional creature spell interaction here. Counter target creature spell, very simple, nice and easy. 3 copies of Negate, again a little bit more interaction, again this time against the non-creature spells, so mostly against control decks. That's where I think we're going to have the most problems, because control usually loses to tempo. Tempo usually beats aggro, and then aggro usually beats control. That's usually just how the 3 tend to work out. So helping us in our worst matchup being the control matchup, here we have 3 copies of Negate, which will be super, super nice. And then we have 1 copy of Throne of the God Pharaoh. This is a way to help us push through some additional damage. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. So basically, at the end of our turn, each creature that we attacked with will basically do 1 additional point of damage, is what this reads. So in the matchups where we're trying to race, the Throne of the God Pharaoh can be super, super crucial. One more additional Aethersphere Harvester in the sideboard. It's possible that it's just supposed to be in the main board, but again, I already discussed how good this is against the mono red decks, and the Aethersphere Harvester is just absolutely fantastic for you to board in against that deck. And like I said, it's possible that it's just supposed to be in the main board, and you could probably just do that. You could go down to one opt. Like I said, the opts are just kind of here as they're decent cards in the main board, but when it comes to the sideboard, you're most likely just going to take them out and replace them with whatever cards are better for the individual matchups. And then finally, last card here in the sideboard is a Nimble Obstructionist. We had 3 in the main board. This is just one more here for the sideboard. This can be nice against the control matchups as well because it allows us to hold up some of our counter spells, and if needed to, we can do something on their end step by trying to flash in this Nimble Obstructionist. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this deck tech. I think it's super sweet. I think this deck has a little bit of potential, and I might try this out over on twitch.tv/AlbyIsLive at some point once Dominaria releases. This is just my first go at a Dominaria deck tech. This was the first kind of deck that I wanted to brew around because, like I said, Tempest Djinn seemed like a pretty decent card, and I like the idea of blue aggressive strategies. It goes against what you normally think of blue. You normally think of them just sitting there, passing the turn, holding up their counter spells. So I really like the blue aggressive strategies, just because of how it kind of goes against what blue is really supposed to be doing in Magic. So like I said, really enjoyed this deck, and I think it'll be super sweet. If you guys did enjoy this deck tech and you want to see more deck techs in the future, go ahead and let me know in the comments section, and let me know with a like on this video. That would also be super appreciative. And if you guys want to see more deck techs or a specific deck tech, let me know down low in the comments. If you guys don't let me know, then I'll just keep on doing some more Dominaria brews here in the days to come. If there's anything you need me to change about how I do these deck techs, if you don't like this current format, then go ahead and let me know. This was basically just the easiest way that I could do it. It required the least amount of editing time, but at the same time allowed me to show you guys all the cards and show you guys the prices and all this other kind of stuff here. So I kind of like this format, but you guys obviously have to let me know if you enjoyed the format as well. So yeah, like I said, this is going to be the end of the video. I'll see you guys here tomorrow with yet another video. Again, daily uploads. Absolutely enjoying it so far. We're 2 days in, so hopefully the third day will be just as successful as the previous 2. And I will see you guys tomorrow.